lot of people ask me, so why did you write this book in the first place? And it's actually in response to a situation or an environment that we are in now called the VUCA environment. This term, VUCA, was actually coined almost 30 years ago by the US military. And they coined this term for the kind of theater of war that they were engaged in those days. And that was mainly the Middle East, Soviet Union, China. And although the Cold War has ended, and some say it's still around, the environment has actually not become more stable. In fact, the entire world's operating environment has gone beyond VUCA just in the theater of war, but it's become VUCA for every one of us. Volatility is the first acronym for the first letter, V, and it means basically that there are changes that are happening, and changes that are not very certain, as in it comes and goes. The next one that is in the VUCA acronym is actually uncertainty. Complexity is really when there are so many different interacting factors in the world. And I'm going to share a little bit about the factors that are kind of creating a more complex world for us. Ambiguity is really when you do not know what a thing really is. The most recent one on the national level is when Parliament had a hard time trying to figure out what is how do we regulate Netflix? The regulators don't really know what Netflix is. Is it a broadcasting company? Is it a technology company? Is it simply a streaming company? And it crosses all platforms, really. And so, not just Singapore, but many countries in the world have problems regulating new businesses like Netflix, Uber, Deliveroo. So, there are major factors affecting our lives right now that causes VUCA. And here are just some of the factors. Political and social changes, most recently in Malaysia. Okay. Things like artificial intelligences, things like autonomous vehicles, okay. Other things like nanotechnology in medicine, robotics, 3D printing, climate change. Today, the complexity arises because not just one factor, but the 9 here, and probably there are a lot more that I've not listed, that is now crisscrossing our lives. And this particular issue is something that we cannot run away from. Because even if you say, I'm not going to do anything about it, I'm just going to stay put, I'm just going to remain as I am, I'm going to retire, I'm going to just sit in my home and do nothing, it will still affect you. Because by doing nothing, it's actually a decision in itself. But this environment caused us to think about things like this. And what is this? This is a hand, and this is a foot. Right? And the question arises as, why do we have 5 fingers and 5 toes? These are the kind of questions that Oxford, Cambridge, the Ivy League universities are using for their admission interviews. But the point is not in the outcome of the question, because if you were to ask biologists, doctors, anthropologists, they will tell you all sorts of various theories about why we have 5 fingers and 5 toes and not 4 and 6. And the point is, we are now living in a world that requires us to ask these kind of questions, because these questions help us to connect seemingly unknowable or seemingly unrelated kind of knowledge or facts. Just like another one would be, why are strawberries and ladybird red? And again, no right answer. What it would do and what people want to know is how you think. I believe for the last 25 years of my life that if we can think right, the world will be right. And for a long time, I've been working with Professor Arthur Costa as well, who talks about habits of mind. And one of the visions that we both have is that we want the world to become what we call a mindful world, meaning people think about issues and people don't jump to conclusions, and people take time to manage impulsivity, and people really consider all facts before they draw conclusions. But in all aspects, thinking is a very broad thing. We need to narrow it down a little bit. And I realized that Pearl actually helped me a lot in my own life to navigate the VUCA environment that I find myself in. And things are always shifting under our feet. The first one is actually called purpose, passion, and prospection. And I find that in a VUCA environment, it's very, very important. In fact, it's more important than ever to have a very clear sense of purpose in our lives. I believe that as the environment becomes more complex and things become more uncertain and the changes come more often, we sometimes lose our sense of purpose. And even very long established institutions sometimes do lose their focus and their purpose, and they end up being kind of chasing after the wrong things. If you were to Google the word prospection, it generally means looking for something, right? As in being able to determine where a particular good deal or stuff comes in. But if you go deeper into the meaning of prospection, it basically means, can you tell what's going to happen in the future? Can you think 2 or 3 steps ahead? And this is one thing which I feel that we need more and more today, because when you start off with one thing and you start the course of action, sometimes the subsequent course of action will lead you to something which you may not be very clear about. One of the things I discovered in this chapter on excuses is that it shows you where your priorities are. I realized that sometimes by uncovering what our excuses are, it really helps us to understand ourselves. So about experiences, one of the things I realized over time is that in today's environment especially, you have experience and you have expertise, and I talk about that in the book. And expertise used to be very highly valued. Right? In fact, experience is also very highly valued. Right? So when you interview somebody who say, how many years of experience do you have? And when you have 25 years experience, you generally would be seen as a very suitable candidate for a particular job, depending on the rank, the level of the job. But today, I think it's more important to develop expertise than experience. Let me just share with you a very simple reason why. Because today, you can get general knowledge through Google. If you want to fix something, surface knowledge, you can get it in probably 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes. You can actually school yourself, educate yourself in whatever you want to know. However, expertise is something which you cannot develop through the internet. Maybe some of you might disagree, especially the younger ones. But in my own experience, you can't, because up to a certain point, there are 2 things that you need. Number 1, skills. So you need to develop that skill. So just going on the Google, watching a video, reading some papers will not give you that skill. You have to go and do it. Even though the world is becoming more volatile, more uncertain, more complex, more ambiguous, expertise is then even more necessary. You have to design your experience towards the goal that you want to achieve. And later on, when I went into education, one of the things that I told myself is that I know nothing about education. And it was actually with fear and trepidation that I went in. And over the years, I took on the same mindset and I said, I have to design my own experience and deepen that skill. So let me move on to attitudes. And this is something which can come from experience and expertise as well, especially for us in this current so-called VUCA environment. We really need to be resilient. And I'm talking about resilience as in what you normally read in the out there about resilience. But the fact that one area of resilience I feel, this is another thing of my passion, is aging. We're in an aging population. In fact, the whole world is aging. For people who are retiring or even like aging, there's a lot of transitional issues, and we need to be resilient. We need to be resilient not just during our work life, during our career, or when we are young. We need to be resilient throughout our lives. When I started to research litheness, it really brought out a very interesting concept. Because litheness, when you say somebody's lithe, it means kind of slim, flexible. But what it also brings about, the concept which I really want to share with you tonight, is this concept of letting go. Letting go. I've met a lot of people who, because they could not let go, whether it's baggage from the past, psychological trauma in the past, issues with people, issues with yourself, right? That they actually carry this with them psychologically, and that actually damages them. And especially when the environment is shifting and turning very quickly, and you cannot let go, Imagine you're going on this 42-kilometer run and you're laden with 10, 20, 30 kilos of weight. It's not going to help you. You need to be flexible. And of course, learning. Again, learning is something which the whole nation talks about almost on a daily basis, that we need to learn and relearn and kind of unlearn and relearn.